Just kidding. Where's my my countdown here? There we go. I can't tell if my audio is working. I think I just screwed this up again. Can you hear me? You got my audio?
Yeah.
But can you hear the music? I couldn't hear the music.
Yeah, I could hear the music. Yeah.
Oh, you could. It was weird.
Yeah.
It was going out a different place. Well, anyway, we got a lot to get through today, so let's just kill the formalities and jump right into it. Welcome back, everybody. You know, I opened the script and now I can't find it. Yeah, here we go. So welcome back to Creative Briefs. It's our weekly recap of all the news and a little bit of analysis about what's going on in the creator economy. Every week, we're going to bring you a roundup of the latest news, some of the stories, and some of our insights about what we think is interesting or relevant, and occasionally a deep dive into one of those topics. We do go live on Fridays at 8 a.m. Pacific time. You can find out more at created.show. It's the official show page. We also do stream on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter Live, Twitter Spaces. I don't know. Like, if you can't find our show, there's something wrong with you. We also do post longer form content on occasion over at creativeeconomy.com, but we do recommend and ask that, hey, give us a follow. We are Creative Economy almost anywhere that you can find us out there today. And we are and always do an airdrop of AMA, the official coin of the show. Head over to the link that you see on screen. It's bit.ly/AMA-drop-18 if you are looking or listening. But you can also scan that QR code that's up there. In addition, we do have a Slack, which is a great place to connect to other builders and founders and talk to some creators, even some investors. So feel free to tune into our Slack if you want to stay connected beyond the realms of the show. So Ken, what do we got this week? We got a lot of stuff to get through.
Oh my God. So much. Let's see. Okay, there we go. See, we can never go a show without technical issues, whether it's audio. Actually, wait, you can hear me just fine this time, right? I'm not muted or anything like that, Greg?
You mean intentionally?
No. Yeah, I had to double check because after last week, I'm like, oh yeah, me being a dumbass is I totally forgot I was on mute the entire time. But apparently, since you can hear me, we're all good. Yeah, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna try.
Sorry, just checking.
Well, that was well timed. Thank you. So we're going to do a rapid fire, and then we have a special guest to join us, and then we'll cover more of the other deep dives in terms of the creator news. So first of all, let's talk about Twitter. Twitter says that it's working on this new feature called Flocks. Now, I don't know about their whole naming things. Like first they had fleets, now they have this thing called flocks.
Does anyone really think it's a bird? I mean, do we really need to be in this genre? Like,
I don't know. I mean, it's whatever. It's this theme that I guess you go with this. Like,
I hear the name flocks, and I'm like, who gives a flock?
Well, that's also true, but it also reminds me of the browser. Back in the day, there was a thing.
Oh, right. I do remember the browser called Flock.
That was. I think it was like a social media browser or something.
Yeah, I think you had to use a modem to open that browser, right, Ken?
I think you would know more about it, right? I mean, you're on the 14.4, right? I was, I just like.
I had a 2400 baud modem as my first modem, actually. So.
But here's the thing.
US Robotics was the name was the big modem manufacturer back then.
Are they still around?
I don't know, actually. We'll figure that out later.
That's how old you are. So Twitter Flocks, if it does come to fruition, it's basically a closed. It's the equivalent of Instagram's close friends. So you can have up to 150 people in there, and so my tweets can be seen specifically by these 150 people that I want, not just to
This is not, but not the paid version that Super Follows is.
Well. No, this is separate from Super Follows. This is not going to be a paid thing that we know of. I don't think this is going to be part of Twitter Blue, as they did with NFTs. But you never know how this could play out. I mean, this could very well be a part of Twitter Blue, in terms of a prototyping and beta testing. Yeah. So content is shared privately. It's almost like the equivalent of List, except that it's more of a community. So. If Greg, if I've added you to my flock, you're going to be able to see. You're going to be notified that hey, Ken has tweeted, and there'll be a special marking on there, as you can see in this screenshot. Well, let me get there, right there. See, little screenshot saying that hey, you've been added to a flock, and you can reply to those conversations. This is I think this is good. for those that don't want to be like, gaslit by other people, it's like, I just want to post stuff about, dogs or tech, whatever, without getting, or about what's happening in COVID without getting blasted by, bots and people who are automatically just gonna, feel outraged by the news. So no idea when this is actually gonna come to fruition, but hey, this is coming down the pipe. So I think it's kind of cool to have this.
I don't know. I think like Twitter doesn't do well with nuance, and I feel like the more knobs and stuff in Twitter is not necessarily helpful.
Yeah. I mean, because you certainly have, like, as you mentioned, super follows. You have communities. There's so many ways to dissect, lists. And of course, you have lists too. So I mean, who knows what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, hey, Stripe is now part of Spotify, not in terms of an acquisition, but Spotify is integrated with the payment processing service.
Did you cancel your Spotify yet?
Oh, I haven't canceled my Spotify yet. To be honest, I was never a Neil Young. Like, I never listened to Neil Young that often.
I don't think it's about the Neil Young part. I think it's about the Joe Rogan part.
Well, this is also true. I don't listen to either one either. So it's like, whatever. But it's like eventually, but I don't know. It's like, do I want to go with Apple? Because
I may try it. We were talking about it this morning, at least pausing it until they get their act together.
Yeah, you'll never go back to Spotify at this point. Hey, you can always go to Tidal.
Yes. Well, I do have this. By the way, if you haven't tried the spatial audio it freaks me out every time I use it. Like I literally have to check constantly. I was like, wait, is the sound coming out of my computer? Can everyone hear what I'm listening to? Because it works too well.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. I've never really paid attention to all that. It's like, they're like, oh, hide to fit out my guide. No, I have no idea what the hell that means. But anyway, so the news is not necessarily that Spotify is part of Stripe. I think it's actually the reverse, right? So Stripe is actually building this healthy ecosystem. They have 50 platforms that they now integrate with that are involved in the creator economy. That's giving creators the opportunity to better monetize and to handle subscriptions and recurring revenue. So, nothing more really to say about it. Just a nice little observation about what's happening with Stripe. I mean, you look at this, it's like creators on 50 platforms powered by Stripe have earned close to 10 billion in revenue, according to Stripe's data. That's pretty notable.
Yeah, there. I mean, Stripe has been pervasive, and they continue to do so.
Yeah. Hey, those that are on Substack, of course, Substack's been in the news this week for, again, about misinformation. Hey, that's going to be a recurring theme. But apparently, Substack is working on a way to incorporate native video into its platform. So not only are you going to be able to record video or directly onto Substack, but you're going to be able to upload it as well. So circumventing YouTube and Vimeo or wherever else you want to upload to share your video. The videos will only be playable if you're viewing a newsletter on the web. But if you're getting it through an email, it's going to be a clickable link. Nice thing. I mean, a nice thing to expand into. Substack has already delved into the podcasting space, so incorporating video is a logical next step. I've actually been looking forward to this, an eventuality that I want to, dust the cobwebs off of my newsletter, because incorporating videos like this would be great to do, as opposed to just being just the static meh, right? So looking forward to that, seeing how that comes out, whether or not, if Substack wants to become like a YouTube competitor of sorts. I'm not really sure, but this is a nice little feature. Yeah. All right, Jelly Smack. I think we've talked about Jelly Smack once or twice on the show. Jelly Smack is putting $500 million to good use. Well, I guess good use, so to speak. They're buying up old YouTube videos from influencers. The point is that they're going to buy them up, these old ones, using their algorithm. That their algorithm thinks, hey, this is a good thing, and they're going to place ads against them. And it's going to be evergreen content. And creators are going to get, I think, between 50,000 to 50 million, depending on the type of content and the creator. So it's very there's no like apparently there's nothing specific saying like, hey, anyone that's doing tech reviews will get 50,000, and those that are doing gardening will get 50 million. I think it's going to be individual, on an individual basis. And there's no timeline in terms of how much that 500 million is going to be spent. But you're starting to see more of these type of things where in a couple of weeks we're going to have Marina Mogilko on our Created Economy show, and she was the one that got $1.7 million in investment from Slow Ventures. So we're seeing a lot more of these type of things being invested into like channels, into videos, into the creators themselves. So fun, interesting thing to see here. I kind of almost see like what Jelly Smack is doing is like the equivalent of like traditional record labels buying up old catalogs. Like I think it was like Bob Dylan's catalog got his entire catalog got bought by, I don't know, some record label. Same thing with like Billy Joel and so on and so forth. So this is probably the same thing. They Jelly Smack will own this catalog and be able to make money off of it in perpetuity, so to speak. So, all right, moving on. We've had I think it was episode 2 of our Created Economy show. We had Dimitri Shapiro on the show to kind of basically give us the lay of the land on Koji. And, this week, Koji announced that it raised $20 million. And, I was kind of curious, like, oh, what's the story behind that? Like, I've been seeing a lot of Dimitri's posts on LinkedIn saying like, hey, they just launched this new app. It's like, wow, every single day, every single week, there's always a bunch of new apps. So I felt it'd be nice to bring him on the show and tell us more about what's going on. And without further ado, hello, Dimitri. How's it going?
Good to see you.
Likewise. So you raised $20 million. What's the deal behind that? Like, this is a Series B.
Like, does it come in tens or hundreds? How do you get it?
Well, first, I want to point out that last time I was on the show, I was caught red-handed with a stolen WeWork. I'm happy to announce that problem has been resolved, and
broke it.
I have my container here. So, cheers.
Yes, with $20 million now, you can actually afford to buy a glass instead of stealing them from WeWork.
Yes. Yeah. Look, we're obviously super excited that we have lots of new investors that have joined us in this round. $20 million is obviously a lot of money that we will put to good use. But I don't know if you guys know the story, how it, sort of this specific syndicate sort of came to be. It's because of your show.
Woohoo!
Yeah, nice.
And that time that we reconnected on your second episode, and you guys sort of learned more about what we were doing, and then obviously continued to connect with you guys and keep you up to date. And Sayanath, who's our lead at Jump, who's joining our board, was talking to Greg at one point and sort of heard about us, and that's how we got connected. And here we are. So thank you.
Yeah. Messiah's in the Slack for the Creative Economy, by the way. So you should all be in there so that you can actually get to chat with her as well.
There's interesting, I was reading, you actually have a bunch of, there's actually one other connection to the show, because you had Karen Burrow from LinkedIn, who was actually on our show a few weeks ago too. So I'm like, I saw it, I'm like, oh my God, like everything is kind of like, this is a very tight community, so to speak. So that's pretty cool. But
yeah.
So Dimitri, I guess, there's this famous question of, what's it feel like to be like an overnight success? And the answer that I saw this comedian or actor give on TV was like, he's like, it's great. Or I just don't know which night it was. Right. The fundraising process, I think has been over glorified as like effortless and, there's people just throwing money at everybody and all these things. for folks who haven't had to go through the process like this, can you share a little bit about like just what's it like putting together around this size, which is abnormal and outsized, I guess, for our space in general, right? Like, congrats on that. It's a good signal. But I guess, like, what is it like convincing people the creator economy is this big of an opportunity?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, this is my third venture-backed startup, so I've actually sort of done the fundraising process a lot. For my first company, Aconics, I raised $34 million, and then I built Veo, which was a competitor to YouTube, and raised $70 million there. And then here prior to this, we raised 16, and now this is 20. So I've sort of done many different financings. They're all different. But certainly, specifically in this case, as we went out to raise and started sort of pitching this grand idea to investors that we were going to refactor the entire creator economy and sort of transform it into, instead of a bunch of companies competing with each other, providing sort of parts of solutions, into sort of an ecosystem, a platform that allows those companies and new entrants to show up and build the future of the creator economy as an integrated thing where you have common identity and common payments and common analytics, and that runs everywhere. This is a hard thing for people to get their head around. Like, we're immersed in it at the foundational level. So to us, it seems like, oh my God, it's just so clear. But like, getting people to understand that and believe in it, and then sort of be able to write the check to, for the future, this is challenging. There's certainly, I've actually started talking to investors a year ago when we didn't even need the money, just because we were sort of really excited about what we were building and wanted to get feedback and all of that. And so sort of many people got engaged and sort of got to that edge, but sort of couldn't move because they weren't sure. They needed more data. They needed, they needed that proof. One investor, who will remain nameless, but talked to 3 times, and each conversation lasted about 15 minutes. And the only question was, what's the GMV? And call me when the GMV is at some other range. So yeah, it's an interesting process, raising money. Although I must confess, I actually love it. There are, I meet so many entrepreneurs that like hate it. That's their least sort of fun part. It's actually one of my favorite parts is going out and sort of showing people the future and trying to get them to believe that this is the future. Yeah. By the way, along with that, in mid-January of 2005, I think I may have told you the story on the second episode, but I'll do a fast one. In mid-January of 2005, this is 4 months before YouTube launched, I went and spoke to close to 24, big VCs, and tried to convince them to invest in what turned out to be Veo, and saying, look, I'm going to make it possible for anyone to broadcast video on the internet, is the way I put it. And they're like, who would want to do that? Like, that doesn't sound like it makes any sense. Like, who would broadcast? Who would watch it? Like, how would you make any money? I just bought this big plasma TV. Like, that's what everybody was into then. And they're like, you're going the wrong way. Like, who wants to watch video on this little screen? You got to like lean forward, like all choppy. And I'm like, it'll get better. But whatever, I failed. And I didn't raise our first round until July of 2005. By then, YouTube already launched and whatever.
Wow. So in terms of the the 20 million, like, what are you're going to increase? You're obviously going to hire more people. You have 16 people currently on staff. Of course, you've made notable hires within the past year, including Annie Morita. Like, that's a big get. She ran Apple's App Store. And if you're going to be the creator economy app store, you want to have someone that ran the app store out in the digital space. And clearly that's a big get. But like, what happens after that? Like, what are you going to do? What else are you going to do with it? Because it's like, let's talk about Web3 and NFTs, right? Because you've been kind of, it's according to the information article, I guess you're kind of dancing around that. And I'm kind of curious, like, what do you have any plans that you can reveal about what you're going to be doing in that space?
Yes. I obviously can't reveal everything, but I'll tease you guys. So, kind of the vision for Koji, and Koji's vision for the creator economy, I guess would be a better way of putting it, is that creators need a sort of a global profile that they can take everywhere, into every social network, right? Each social network has its own profile and sort of capabilities that those profiles facilitate. And we believe it's really valuable for creators to have a global profile that's portable, meaning it's web-based. It's just a link, which they can take everywhere and link to it from all their social networks, from their email signatures, QR codes, whatever. And then that profile should be extremely expressive, customizable beyond what social networking profiles allow. It should be extensible by these modules. We call them mini apps. They're just, web apps. So you can think of them as just modules, features even. And those modules can be created both by Koji's own developers, which indeed today, most of those modules are created by our developers. But more importantly, that the platform is open and that any developer from around the world without our permission can show up and look at our documentation and take any of these scaffolds, for example, that we provide, and very rapidly create new capabilities for this global portable profile, and sort of allow anyone in the world, that can write code, to participate in the creator economy without having to start a new company to do so. Today, if you're a developer, a product person, and you want to create something for the creator economy, like you have to go and build a company and raise money and all that. There's no need for that anymore. Now you can just show up and build a product, build an app, and instantly have it in our app store, accessible to all creators. They can easily add it to their global profile and take it everywhere. And so that's always been sort of the vision for Koji, is this capability to allow third-party developers to build this. And then we, of course, provide common identity layer and built-in payments that work inside of all the social networks and all operating systems. It bypasses all the app stores, so there's no app store fees, not for Apple, not for the Play Store, etc. And so that's sort of the beginning. And today we have 205 of these mini apps. Some of these apps compete with existing creator economy companies. Like we have an app called Shoutout that competes with Cameo, or an app called Rares that competes with OnlyFans, and it's like many of these kinds of apps. We now have 8 creator economy companies that have realized that we're sort of at the center of this new, creator economy 2.0, if you will, and have taken their services and minified them and put them into our app store, right? And then yesterday, we announced the first of multiple partnerships that we will announce, where a company called Gemmy, which is also sort of a link in bio website builder, has taken our entire app store and integrated it into their platform. So when people are creating a Gemmy site, they can easily add functionality of Koji mini apps into that site, right? So you'll see many more partnerships like that. Again, those are kind of where we are today. As we move forward, and this financing certainly facilitates this, one, we will sort of rapidly grow the team. We'd like to at least triple this year. So shameless plug, we're hiring, please come talk to us. And then, we will see more partnerships, obviously, on both sides. Existing creator economy companies minifying their services, putting them in our app store going into all these other platforms. And to the Web3 piece, we, a few months ago, sort of started that initiative by releasing 6 mini apps that creators can add to their profile, as well as 4 developer scaffolds that let developers much more rapidly create Web3 applications. And we'll sort of be leaning more into that. So you'll see a lot more stuff coming from us that has to do with Web3, including a release next week, I believe, of another really powerful Web3 app that I think will raise lots of eyebrows and make some people nervous. But I think the bigger thing that you will see, and that's probably going to be towards the end of the year, maybe even next year, is sort of the alignment of incentives between developers that develop the apps, creators that choose which apps they use, and consumers that choose which creators they engage with. And Web3 sort of has this unique ability to help us align those incentives into sort of symbiotic relationships that sort of create dynamics for more innovation and sort of are more equitable for all parties involved. We wrote a white paper that you can find on our website that, again, a bit ambiguously points to what it is we're talking about, but it'll certainly become more clear in the second half of this year.
So you have 150,000 creators currently on your platform. How do you view that traction? I mean, you've only been you're 9 months old. Are you happy with that traction so far? What are your estimates in terms of, at the end of 2022, how do you see this explosion happening? Do you see Koji having over 1 million creators? Because I think if we go back to the Signal Fire report that everyone keeps citing, there's 50 million creators, right? So how do you see your journey as you trek towards that? I guess the arbitrary but kind of benchmark number of 50 million.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I've obviously read that report, and I think it's awesome and super valuable work. But we define creator actually much broader than that. And in fact, those are already represented. Like there are many creators on our platform that would never call themselves creators. They are, for example, SMBs or political operatives or various types of entities that realize that we, humans engage each other more and more in this way digitally. And that we need better and better tools to be able to do that, both synchronously and asynchronously. And so we think the addressable market is, certainly hundreds of millions, if not over 1 billion people. In fact, I think it is more than 1 billion. So 150,000 arguably is a drop in the bucket. I mean, we're happy with it because, this is organic sort of evolution of this thing, but these are certainly early adopters. We are going to be, if all goes well, much more than 1 million creators by the end of the year. Growth is accelerating. We now have success stories that are coming out that are really powerful. One you can check out is a guy named Cobb Smith, who, I've asked if I could speak of his story, and that's why I can disclose some things here to you. Is former sheriff's deputy that didn't really like his job, gained a lot of weight, and then decided, look, I got to get in shape, and lost 60 pounds in 6 months. And as part of that, sort of realized that he needed to figure out how to eat better and sort of created a bunch of recipes. And he's like, look, I sort of don't even know how to use this tech. So I went to Canva and made this little cookbook, and now is selling that cookbook inside of Instagram and TikTok on his Koji profile. It was $11.99. Now it's $13.99. And in the last 30 days, he's made over $12,000 selling this cookbook that he's made. And I was just talking to him. He's like, I've never made this much money in my life. This is life-changing. And wow, and it's growing. And like, if you look at his trend, it's exponential. And I think as more people start to realize that you don't have to, by the way, he's got 16,000 followers on Instagram. It's not like millions of followers, right? So this is sort of Kevin Kelly's 1,000 true fans, but I think expanded beyond the 1,000 true fans, because the people that are buying his stuff are not necessarily sort of 1,000 true fans of his. Just people that find it compelling and then convenient to be able to make that purchase. And so we're creating a middle class of creators. And I think once people start to realize that, obviously growth will continue to accelerate.
Cool. Well, Greg, do you have any other questions for Dimitri? If not, we can move on.
No, I guess, I guess the broader sort of ecosystem, I guess, you articulated some of the things I think that you think are changing, to some degree. We're confined by the tools we know today, right? Like, and I'm kind of curious, is there a vision that you see Koji going to beyond sort of I guess a little bit more on this Web3, not because of Web3 per se, but just more because of it challenging the way we think about things. And what I've always appreciated and loved about Koji is that the approach is completely different, like from the rest of like everyone else in the space, right? But it was interesting. I had a call yesterday, and like one of the places where this sort of founder was mentioning was like there was like this tension between like too much customization and just enough customization, right? And so I'm just kind of curious a little bit about just projecting outwards for the industry as a whole, right? Like what are the ways we should be thinking to refactor the world, right? Like maybe beyond even just the containers that we know of today, right? Like, are there any insights or things that you're excited about?
Yes. So when the Apple App Store first launched in 2007, my co-founder Sean actually found an article recently that was published 90 days after the launch and on TechCrunch that basically said, look, nothing burger. Like, you only need a few apps. You need a mail client, you need a browser, and that's pretty much it. Mm-hmm. And of course, the lighter, the lighter app.
I don't think that exists anymore. Unfortunately, I don't think there's a lighter app.
Yeah, but if you look at it today, by having this open platform that allowed creativity to flourish and created, sort of free market dynamics. Look at the apps in App Store. That maybe there are too many. There's over 2 million in each App Store. But certainly those apps are things we could have never predicted, or at least wouldn't have predicted at the time. Or if you look at, again, I was talking about videos back in the day. One of the hardest questions to answer, when I was pitching Veo, was the question of like, what kind of content are people going to produce? And I would say, well, everything. Like, look at the web, everything. And people are like, yeah, but really everything? I'm like, no, really everything. And that was really hard to grok. So I think we will see the same kind of dynamics here, where because you have an open platform that anyone can show up to, and very rapidly, specifically in Koji's case, because you can start from a scaffold or from existing apps and make a copy of them and then sort of expand on them, you see evolution. I'll give you sort of a specific example to that. So we have, our most popular app today in the App Store is the tip jar. It's the simplest one, and it's also the first one from a ranking standpoint. But many creators are sort of allergic to the concept of tipping. They feel that it's like begging. Mm-hmm. And so one of our developers took the tip jar and forked it, made a copy of it, and then modified it to be an app that's also in our App Store now called Love Jar. And that took maybe 20 minutes to do. That's sort of the power of Koji, the ability to clone an app, modify it, and relaunch it. So in 20 minutes, you went from tip jar that people don't want to use, some people, to Love Jar that those people love using. Another developer took the tip jar and also in about 20 minutes made an app called Premium Inbox. And Premium Inbox, again, also in our App Store, allows creators to basically set a fee and say, if you pay me this amount of money right now, you can type a message and add attachments and whatever. I'm guaranteed to get that message, pay attention to it, and respond to you. A VIP lane to creators. Wow, that's a killer app by itself. Before now, you'd have to go and like launch a company to bring that to market. Now you can spend 20 minutes, build it, launch it, and there it is. And so I think when you drop those dynamics, the kinds of things we will see are extraordinarily hard to try to predict.
I think what's exciting about what you're describing, I guess, and if we look at like the NFT space, for example, I don't find the art to be the exciting part, and obviously, and the analog and the creator economy is the content part, right? The utility part, however, of NFTs, right, like is where I think there's tremendous value and room for innovation and a whole number of things that haven't even been conceived of yet. And like what you described actually is like exposing a utility that people can then apply creativity to, right? Like, and so that's what I actually think is like super compelling, right? Like if we look at like how to move forward, I think like access control and as you're describing, right? Like maybe with or without financial incentive or, or loyalty or other kinds of things seems like a super great toolkit to have available to start to experiment with. So congrats on that. We're as usual, super excited to always have you. We appreciate the support from the sidelines and also anytime you can be with us.
Thanks so much, guys.
Yeah, no worries. And feel free to stick around. We have a little bit more news to cover and love your opinion. If you're
related to what you were just describing, actually, I believe is there's an article coming up here, right, Ken?
Well, I mean, let's talk about
let's
fan
put
house.
The fan house up. Yeah.
We'll talk about that. Let me put that. Wait.
Just switch to this.
There we go. Okay. I'm like, wait, why can't I do that here? Yeah, I'm so good with tech, apparently. Here. Okay. So, Greg, I think it was late last year or early last year when we started doing the show. One of our articles that we covered was about Fanhouse, right? And we were constantly debating about Apple's tax on the App Store. And so Fanhouse was pretty prominent about that. Like, hey, like we don't like this. We don't like that 30% tax. It's unfair. It's hurting the individual creators. And they've been pretty vocal about it still. But then this kind of came out on, what was that, 2 days ago. Fanhouse adds a 50% surcharge to in-app purchases to cover Apple tax. Now, here's the rationale for that. Like, according to Rosie Nguyen, the co-founder, they wrote that the changes are being made as a result of Apple's BS, right? So, on just based on that, like that 50% surcharge, you're like, wait, why? Like, this is such a dick move by Fanhouse. But on the other hand,
why do they need Apple? I just don't even understand.
Well, it's an incentive. It's
for starters.
People
we know they could go build this on Koji right now, right?
Yeah. So, but that's the point. The Fanhouse wants to make it.
So just delete your app. Stop with the PR stunts.
I don't know. I mean, so you would give up an iOS app?
I don't like. Everything they're doing in the iOS app is certainly doable without the iOS app, right? Like there's nothing special about an iOS app. So if you're complaining that it costs too much to acquire a customer, go find a different channel and acquire them there, right? I mean, the thing I have a problem with when people don't like the tax is that it's part of doing business. And if you don't like that channel, great. Go to a different place and build your own. You could go to Koji and you can literally build this app on Koji right now in like 30 minutes, basically, right?
Are you trying to help Dimitri get his Series C right now? Is that what you're trying to do?
But I'm not here because like I have a problem with Fanhouse. I guess my point is just that if you're doing this for the theatrics of like proving like how bad Apple is, you don't need Apple to do you don't need them to make your app to begin with. Right? Yeah. Like you can make a PWA, you could build it on Koji, you could build it in React on your own and just stand up a website and be a mobile app first if you really want to do. There's so many alternatives to being on Apple, especially if you already have the audience. Just say, hey, the app is going away. We're only going to be available here. Like I just don't get all this. Like I get why people are annoyed with Apple, but I just don't get like why they act like they don't have a choice.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that. I think to kind of put it in a little bit of context, I think they want to have their cake and eat it too, so to speak, right? So yes, they what FanHouse wants is like, hey, we still want to have our iOS. We just don't want people to make in-app. We just want to deter people from making that in-app purchases through our iOS app, and so we're going to make it cost prohibitive, and instead force you to go to our website to make that said purchases. So they still can, you still can use your iOS, because it's like, why are you depriving like a big chunk of your users from having access to this app? But in order to continue to get all the benefits or whatever, to make other additional purchases, do it through our app, which will make it through our website, which is going to be theoretically, or maybe actually reality, cheaper. Like, Dimitri, like, what would you say about this? Like, do you agree with Greg's strategy to say, hey, just blow off your iOS and find other avenues?
I think Greg is spot on. I couldn't have said it better myself. We live in a world today where there's very little sort of value in creating a native app. There's certainly discovery in the App Store, right? And that is a value. But that's really it. So that comes actually obviously with a very high, sort of cost associated with it.
Mm-hmm.
The taxes, and then sort of writing the code for these, multiple native platforms. The web has come, specifically mobile web, it's come a huge way now. And so I think it's a no-brainer that all companies should be, thinking about going sort of web only rather than having sort of native apps.
Can you explain a little further? Like, I think in the technology timeline, like we went from obviously just the web to mobile web to native apps, and now we're kind of going back into mobile web. Like, why is it that we shifted into this something more native, and why is native no longer good? Is it because native we're seeing like Google and Apple having more of a stranglehold and being cost prohibitive to developers now? Like, why is there a resurgence, or why is there starting to become this renaissance in just the traditional web?
I think it's a great question. I think it's very important. Most people obviously haven't sort of had the time to think about it. But you can look at history. I remember in August of 1995, standing in line to get in at midnight to Fry's Electronics and buy a copy of Windows 95 in a box. It's like stacked, super tall boxes, and took it home and spent the rest of the night installing it on my Toshiba 486 laptop that had the plug-in mouse. And even back then, it was clear to us, like, this is stupid. Like, really, I have to go wait in line and get a box and then install it? And then people said, yeah, this is stupid. Let's just download software via FTP. And like, we did that for a moment, and then people were like, this is stupid. Let's just make software available as a service. Like, we're all connected, right? And that's when we got, the web and SaaS. And then Steve Jobs, it's his fault. May he rest in peace. But in 2007, Steve Jobs took us for a loop by saying, no, look, you've got to write these native apps. And
the original iOS apps were not native apps. Actually, they were PWAs also.
Yeah, but I think that gets too technical for this crowd.
Well, I'm just saying they were actually mobile web apps first, right? Like the original apps. They didn't last very long, but like
exactly.
Yeah.
But with Apple and then with Google, sort of showing up and saying, look, it's all about native. That's sort of, we went on this detour, and now we're back where developers realize that the building for iOS and Android and sort of all the form factors of those, especially on Android with all the OEM devices, and then also still having to support the web, because you still do have to support the web. This is overwhelming. Like, can't do it. It's too cost prohibitive, difficult to maintain, etc. And because of now sort of, again, innovation in mobile web, and including things like progressive web apps, these PWAs that Greg is talking about. Like, you can actually install web apps on your home screen, meaning it's a bookmark, but it feels like a like an app. It's convenient. In fact, on my iPhone, my Twitter app is the Twitter's, Twitter Lite, the PWA, rather than the native app, and it performs even better than the native app. And so anyway, yeah, look, technologically now there's no real reason for the 99.9% of apps that are built to be native. They can just be web apps. And if they're web apps, they're instantly available. Meaning there's nothing to install or download.
Yeah.
You can put them on your link in bio. You can put them on your profile. And again, that's this, and they're much faster to build, like radically faster.
But are they
actually? Do you offer that today on like for a user when I'm on a Koji link page to make
to installers at PWA?
Yeah,
you can do it manually. We sort of don't highlight it, but sure, yeah.
That'd be pretty cool, I think, actually.
Yeah, I'm just curious, like in terms of like the native apps, like obviously building it, having it directly on a device, like specifically on a smartphone. There's all these sensors and
you have access to most of that crap these days if you want it. But I guess more important point is 90% of the apps aren't using that stuff, right? Like
agreed.
What is this? Fan house. Right? Right? Like this is
sensors.
In my opinion, this is just clearly like, PR, maximizing here, right? Like, because they have no reason that they're literally just gating content. Like you could do that with like a million technologies. You literally don't need the App Store for discovery. And it seems like they're growing. I doubt they're actually acquiring creators because they're in the App Store. It's likely through word of mouth from other creators anyway, right? Like that's the primary driver. Because buying app downloads is like super expensive these days anyway. So it's like a pretty piss poor way to like actually win. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we have like a few more minutes. So why don't we dive into this other, I guess the big thing, I guess, in my opinion, the big topic for this week was this video from a YouTuber or from this vlogger, Hank Green, I believe. He went out and put a video on YouTube that basically complained about or criticized TikTok and saying like, hey, TikTok's creator fund is not paying a proportional amount to the videos I produce for that. It's like he publishes. I think this is something that we talked about before, but like the creator fund is like low payouts. He 2.5 cents for every 1,000 views on TikTok through the creator fund. And Mr. Beast and several other creators have all come out and shared how much they've been paid for their views. And so TikTok's been getting a lot of grief as a result of that. I think this is no different. This criticism has also been levied against Instagram and Facebook and all these other ones. The only exception is YouTube, right? And so there's a New York Times article from Shira Ovide, a great reporter, who talked about like, hey, why can't creator funds just follow the same model as YouTube, because YouTube also gives a cut of the advertising as well. So I think they're holding up YouTube in high regards as opposed to what all these other platforms are doing. Like TikTok has a finite number in terms of a fund, and the more people that you have on there that are being supported by this fund, the less the payout is for creators. So, Greg, what are you thinking in terms of? Do you have any thoughts about people criticizing these creator funds, and should there be an overhaul?
I mean, this is a very thorny topic, I think, right? Because to what degree are we quote unquote entitled to the revenues of these other companies, right? And I think to play both sides of this, I would say, right? Like, I think to be fair on what the creator is actually making, I think you would have to do a total inclusivity of like brand deals and other stuff, because those views are not monetizing purely at 2.5 cents, right? They're probably, doing $500, $1,000, $10,000 deals alongside that because they have the viewership and they have the audience, right? So I think like the intellectually honest way to frame like the total value to the creator is not like purely from like one source, but like all the sources that they are able to derive from that revenue stream, right? Mm-hmm. Now, on the flip side, right, like you've got platforms who, again, just like Apple, right, like they obviously have an operating cost that's associated with it, right? They pay so a bunch of things to operate their business, but at the same time, they're also profiting to some degree. Now, it's very hard to make these like sort of like off the top sort of discussions. I don't know what kind of content Hank Green puts out. Maybe it doesn't monetize well with ads, right? Like, maybe it's just in a poor performing category. Maybe his content like gets lots of views, but it's just like, you know, like inappropriate often. I don't know. Like there's so many nuances that could be associated with it. My guess is, of course, always that the platforms have some wiggle room, but their business models were not designed from the beginning to support this. And that makes it inherently hard for them to adjust towards it, right? Like, because YouTube can't go back to its shareholders and be like, yeah, we're just going to make like, you know, 50% less this year so we can make the creators happier, right? Like, because they're ultimately going to be equally accountable, if not more accountable to their shareholders than anything else, right? That provides them the capital to work and do everything else.
But if you're creating I imagine from my understanding, the whole point of establishing a creator fund is to entice creators to create on your platform. Like, you know, TikTok has their creator fund. They want these influencers to produce content to drive more people to be more engaged and to sign up and download their app, right?
Well, maybe like, but some of it maybe is just PR, like to say like, no, we support creators, and like, you know, they get the talking point. No, we've dedicated $50 million to paying creators, right? Like, you know, and so I don't know. I mean, you're right. In principle, right? Like that it should be rewarding, but like the reality is the number of people vying for a small amount of money is rather significant, right? Like $50 million being paid.
You don't actually know that. Like, that's the thing. Like when you said it was like, oh, look at this. Like TikTok has a billion, and let's talk specifically about TikTok, right? TikTok has $1 billion creator fund, but they haven't really told you how much.
But how many creators, right? Yeah. Like, no, but my point is not how much is distributed. It's just more that it's all of the creators on TikTok fighting for that $1 billion, though, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and creators don't know. Like, I can sign up and like, oh, I'm going to be part of it. Like, I can make like, you know, tens of thousands of dollars. You know, especially when you see something like, hey, this video blew up, went completely viral, right? Yeah. And all of a sudden you get like, oh yeah, TikTok's
but think about it. Think about this. Let's put it this way: if you already have 1 billion views on TikTok, right? Are you actually going to leave? Right? Like, if I was going to pay a higher number, I'd pay to the new people to get them to want to stay. Because the people who already have a large established audience, like, just, you know, speaking frankly, they're not the most likely to just like, screw this, I'm only making 2.5 cents, I'm out of here. No, they're not. None of these people are saying they're quitting, right? They're just complaining.
Yeah, no one's officially said, okay, boycott TikTok. No one is saying boycott. There are comparisons to, obviously, like, hey, what, you know, YouTube is kind of like that high up on that pedestal, right? And look, but I think this is a concern that creators have. I think it's a justifiable concern.
I'm not saying there's not a concern here, right? But yeah, I guess like, I don't know how to, like, it's hard to answer. I don't know, Dimitri, what your thoughts are, but you know, it seems like a bind that is unwinnable, honestly. Like, the only way to win in this game is to, like what Dimitri's doing, is reinvent the model, right? Like, YouTube is winning because it designed a business with those kinds of costs associated, essentially, to operate it. TikTok didn't start that way, right? So like, now for them to change, very, very difficult. For YouTube to even offer more rev share would be difficult, right? Like, because YouTube's got a business model optimized around it. Facebook, same thing, right? Like, they're going to nibble at the edges, but they're never going to bite the apple, right? Like, they're never going to like just say, you know what, you're right, here's half the money. It's just not going to happen. It's going to be a new one.
And YouTube already has that. I think it's why YouTube is held in high regard, so to speak, right? Is because they already have that search already part of that foundation, right? TikTok doesn't have that built in there. They don't think they necessarily think about it like that, and neither does Facebook or Instagram.
I think it's less about the discovery, though, Ken. I think it's about the underlying business model. Like, YouTube has said for a dozen years now, we pay like 30%, you know, which has been a premium in the space for a long time now, right? You can't, when you have a multi-billion-dollar business moving already, adjusting the unit economics is very, very difficult, right? Like, so you need a business built from the ground up with those unit economics in place for it to ultimately succeed. And it will happen. There will be displacement here, right? Like, who knows? It could be on a Koji, or it could be on a Gemi, or who knows what platform is going to take off, right? Mm-hmm. But realistically, it has to be designed from the beginning with the idea of more fairness. And I guarantee you that no matter what you do, people will complain that you're being unfair, right? No matter what you take, absolutely, there will always be people who are dissatisfied or think you're taking too much. It doesn't matter what percentage you take.
Dimitri, do you have any thoughts?
Look, I think all the things you guys are talking about make sense and are true. All of this evolves, right? And this is, again, we're kind of pointing at the moon here, of there needs to be a more sort of equitable ecosystem of participants. And these platforms are fine. They are sort of the prior generation's way of doing it. We now need more evolved ways of doing it. We now realize that people that create content are extraordinarily valuable. People used to just think of them, they're just users. Some users post and make content, and some users consume. And now we realize, no, they're not just users. They're extraordinarily valuable participants in this thing. And the platforms themselves today are quite rigid in kind of the way that they function, right? Again, because they're sort of owned by one company. They're not these open platforms, as like the one that I was describing, Koji, is, that anyone can show up and extend the capabilities. And so I think, like, if you can create the right dynamics for innovation and sort of equitable future, then things will sort of coalesce and align in some way. How exactly, again, hard to predict, but generally all parties should find real equity in the relationship.
Would you create a creator fund for Koji? Is that something you think about, or is that just vanity thinking right now? Or would that be something like nice to have?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Short answer is I don't know. I mean, that's one way of doing it, by saying there's a fund. I think, again, and to Greg's point, that's actually very valuable from whatever PR standpoint and things like that. But I think the real value is, teach a man to fish, right? Like, give people the tools to build their future.
Yeah.
Instead of sort of subsidizing them today to publish content to your platform. And I think that we're techie nerds here, and not marketing folks. And so that's sort of the way we think, is how do we create sort of the platform to do that naturally, rather than doing it by
Well, it's like the Spotify example, though, right? Like, if creators want a better world, they actually need to put their time and money and energy in the tools that are trying to create it, right? Like, as fast as they can and as meaningfully as they can, because the only way for those things to get off the ground is if they actually get the support of the ecosystem as well. And then you have alternatives, right? But look, you always have the choice to build your own. Feel free, go nuts, right? Like, every business requires lead generation and sort of like, new customers to pipeline into things. So it's hard to do. That's why the platforms are successful for most creators, right? But at the middle of the ground, like where we are now, there's a generation of companies coming to fill the gap to try to provide a bit more of an equitable play, like Dimitri's describing here. But I think, realistically speaking, what we saw, for example, like, I was going to ask this question earlier, is like, did you see a slowdown at all in the investment? I think the creator economy investment space probably got a little overheated, right? Because we got stacked 10 deep on like almost every type of tool that existed, but we didn't get enough creators flowing into those tools yet to know who's the winner, right? And I think like what's going to end up happening is we'll see a lot of consolidation probably over the course of the year, or a bunch of people go out of business who couldn't garner enough support from the creator side to sort of turn this into like a more scalable business. That is going to be the problem that will actually lead to you being stuck in whatever dilemma you think you're stuck in, right? Is because without these tools succeeding, right? Because creators like don't want to invest the time and energy or resources to like learn them and help them to create these new pathways. What ends up happening is you get stuck with the status quo. And Facebook doesn't have to move faster. YouTube doesn't have to move faster. TikTok doesn't have to move faster because there isn't competition that they're actually now trying to compete against, right? And we have to give them competition for the world to change.
Yeah. So we're running out of time, but I want to, I guess another big thing, quick word, Greg, because I know you're a fan of these type of things. YouTube, Solana, and Reddit also, I'm sorry, not Solana, YouTube, Reddit, and OpenSea are potentially exploring new NFT integrations. Well, specifically YouTube and Reddit are saying, hey, we're testing it out, or hey, it might be in the pipeline, very similar to what Twitter just announced last week. And OpenSea, leaked images suggest that, hey, they're going to support Solana NFTs, although OpenSea says it's old, quote, old speculation, end quote. So, Greg, what do you think about all of this? Is this something yay, nay?
Yeah,
so what?
This is awesome. I mean, I think everyone who thinks that everyone won't have a wallet like within 2 years has got their head in the sand, right? And you will be auto provisioned a wallet somewhere in your life. It's going to be either from Facebook or Instagram or Koji, but either way, you're going to get a wallet, and everyone will be able to will be on the blockchain. And my guess is that's going to be within the next 2 years. Like your bank may give you one, right? Like, but you're going to end up with a wallet on the blockchain. Like my guess is like billions of people will have wallets within the next couple of years.
Yeah.
Because these NFTs have to go somewhere, right?
Yeah. But what would an NFT on YouTube look like in your? I think it looks
like everything else, right? So I think like, it could be fans buying parts of clips that they love, right? It could be creators doing collectibles, right? To like extend more VIP parts. It could be custom work that creators are doing specifically for a channel. It could be commemorating, like being a YouTube paying member for X period of time. There's so many ways to use NFTs that are either as like, sort of rewards or as utilities, right? And other unlocks that there's an infinite number of ways for this to go, I think. And it's going to go all of those ways.
Which between Reddit and YouTube, which would you be more excited about for NFTs?
So I think Reddit is probably more likely a candidate for like a currency. Like they already have Karma. It's a sort of a natural floating sort of concept over there. I think clips, like collectible art, like pieces, probably makes the most sense on the YouTube side to me.
Cool. All right. Well, that wraps up another week of creator news. Thank you for everyone for joining us on Created Briefs. Thank you, Dimitri Shapiro from Koji, for just joining in on the conversation and telling us everything about your $20 million raise and everything that's coming down the pipe. Really appreciate that. I really wish you would give us like more deep, dark, top secret information, like acquisition strategies and source code information. And
he told you one secret: they're hiring.
You can always have me back.
Of course.
I will divulge more secrets.
We love it. We love it. You're always welcome, my friend. And if you are looking for a role, by the way, great company, great folks to work with. Highly encourage you. Check out what they're hiring for.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Be well. We'll see you all soon. Ken, good job today. We almost did it all in time. But on that note, it's probably time to call it a week. It's been a long week already.
Absolutely.
So yeah, let's bye everyone. Have a great weekend. We'll be back next week with more content Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. And we'll look forward to seeing you then. Bye-bye.
Bye.